Hey guys, Physics here, or Exam from the Undecided. I promised my guild some guides, so I'm going to make the first one, and this one is about how to sim yourself, how to use Raidbots, and how to import stat weights into Pawn. So I can't waffle on too much about it. After the video, if you decide you like it, please hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to visit me on Twitch, which is www.twitch.tv/ItsPhysix Gaming. And without further ado, let's jump into it. So, what you want to do, guys, I can't show you because my UI is off. So you want to go to your chat box, type / and then sim C. As you can see it just down there, and press enter. This will generate your string. Now what you want to do with this is make sure everything is highlighted. If it isn't, just Control A to highlight everything, and then Control C to copy it. Simple as that. Then you can click OK, that will close it all down. And then you will go to www.raidbots.com, and that will bring up this website here. So we have all these different options in front of us, but before we do that, we're going to go in to one of the sims and go through all the different simulation options that are available to you. So we'll just select the Top Gear from now. In all of your simulations, you'll be posting your SimulationCraft import string into the box where it says paste input from the SimulationCraft add-on, surprise surprise, and this will populate whatever sim you're going to do with the information from your character. So we're going to ignore all of this for now. We'll come back to this later on. So if we come all the way down here, these are your simulation options, and this is how you're going to optimize your sims. So we'll go through them one at a time, and we will give you as much detail as possible. However, I would just encourage you to come in here, have a look at what Raidbots is telling you when you select the different options, and have a look for yourself. So, first of all, iterations. That is pretty much the number of times Raidbots will run your simulation. Sims over about 5 to 15 minutes will be terminated, so you want to try and keep your iterations kind of low. But you can go all the way up to 100,000. I would never do that because you can have too much of a good thing. Somewhere between 10 and 25, 10 to 15,000 is good. I keep mine on 10,000. So that will sim my character 10,000 times through this made-up fight that we're going to be doing. And then we come to pretty much one of the most important, which is fight style. By default, it will be selected as patchwork. That's a no movement, single target, tank and spank, don't do a thing but DPS the boss and kill it before it kills you type of fight. Underneath that we have the brand new dungeon slice, which I've been using a bit for Mythic Plus. It's kind of good. It's a bit like hectic add cleave, so it will sort of take into account chain pulling for Mythic Plus, heavy movement, interrupts. It also will not let you select your fight length or the number of bosses on when you select this. It does include buffs like scrolls, so int scrolls, battle shout scrolls, fortitude scrolls, potions, flasks, food, and it will disable raid buffs like reorigination array from your Azerite armor. So keep that in mind. I don't really know what target dummy does, but I'd imagine it's exactly what it says, just swelling on the target dummy. Hectic add cleave is kind of heavy movement with regular ad spawns. It takes into account about 5 ads every 15 seconds. That lasts around 22 seconds, I believe. A bit like Horridon, if you remember the Horridon fight. And then we have light movement, heavy movement, exactly what it says. Single target, where there's either light movement involved or heavy movement involved. A casting patchwork. This is pretty much the boss is always casting. It can be interrupted, so it will take into account if you have an interrupt and use that as well. Cleave ads. So single target up, and there's another ad with it, and you'll be cleaving onto it for around 40 to 50% of the fight. How to scouter. This is a bit of a weird one. So there'll be sort of like movement involved, there'll be interrupts involved, and there'll be sort of like the boss can't be hit every 2 minutes or so. So it was sort of, it's a bit like shall we say a bit gahoony? I like that word. Yeah, we'll say a bit gahoony, you know, so there's shit going down everywhere. Beast Lord. This is a lot like Hectic Add Cleave. but there will be sort of like one ad spawning quite a distance away from you, and then more ads every sort of 75 seconds or so. And then we get to Atraxion, which is based on the Atraxion fight, which is a single target fight, but the player will be stunned and there'll be heavy incoming damage to raid, so you'd have to sort of like run out and stuff like that. For most of my sims, honestly, I use Patchwork because it's just the easiest, especially when doing some of the sims that we'll be talking about, like stat weights. Number of bosses, I keep this at 1 because your fight style will determine the number of bosses anyway, generally, unless you're simming for a specific fight or encounter. Fight length, around 5 minutes, again, unless you're simming for a specific fight, which is bound to go on longer than that. And SimC version, this is quite interesting. So I select nightly because the nightly one means that SimulationCraft or Raidbots is updated at 11 PM every night at Pacific Standard Time. Now weekly it's updated every Monday. So your nightly ones are probably going to be more up to date with hotfixes. There's a small chance of bugs with the nightly one, obviously, if they're updating it every night. But personally, I prefer the nightly one. The battle for Azeroth, this is your RA stacks, or your re-origination array stacks from your Azerite armor from Raid. I use Smart because if you're importing your SimulationCraft add-on string, it will have it in there. And now we get to more complex stuff once again. So, if you've got a potion, if you don't use, say, Bursting Blood, and you use the cheaper options like Agility or Strength, or you don't use Rise in Death and you use Intellect, then you can select the right one. Otherwise, you can let SimulationCraft decide, and it will always decide the best one for you. Food, you can choose between the Feast or the personal foods, such as Swamp Fish and Chips for the haste. It depends how accurate you want to be. Again, with the flasks, it will either give you Legion flask, BFA flask or Legion flask, or if you're completely skint and complete idiot, no flask. Augmentation. This is if you use one of the Battle-Scarred augmentation runes, which honestly you should be doing. If not, just keep that as disabled. Honestly, I keep all mine as let SimC decide because you know me, I come jam-packed full of the best goodies ever, and I'm always skint because of it. Raid buffs. Quite important this. You want to deselect the ones that won't be in your raid. For example, if you have no maid and you have no mage, and you have no intellect scroll, deselect arcane intellect. If you're lucky enough to have all 3 classes, which most raids should, keep these selected. You will always have a bloodlust in any form, whether it's drums, shaman, mage, hunter, there will always be one, so keep this selected, unless of course you're simming for Mythic Plus. Now if you have no monk, deselect Mystic Touch. Of course it's the same with Chaos Brand, and of course it's the same with Bleeding as well. So basically use your common sense, so deselect the ones that you won't have. It's easy enough. You can get a more detailed SimC report. It will give you pie charts and stuff like that, but honestly their default screen, which comes up after a sim, which I'll show you when we generate our stat weights, has enough information on there for you to take away from it. So moving down, this is the AP out or action priority list for SimC, and what that will be, it's the order that your abilities or spells are cast and used in throughout the simulation. Now Raidbots has their own, and it's very good, and it has one for every single class and spec in the game. However, some class discords do have their own, so keep an eye on that. They might be a bit better. I know How to Priest has a really good one for Shadow or did in Legion, and I know that they're working on one for BFA, and if there is a better one out there, select it, Control A it, and drop it into this, and this will update and use that action priority list for your class and spec instead of the default one, and it may be slightly better. The report and notification options just tells you what they're going to be, and that's about it. If you're sort of like registered or logged in to Raidbots, you get an email notification when it's ready, because there are some keys and stuff. But that is all the information here. If you do want to know more, come onto the site, click some buttons, play around with it. It tells you roughly what's going to be happening at the bottom of each box. and yeah, just play around with it. So now we'll go to the main screen again, and we are going to go through every single one of these options as well, starting with Quick Sim. Quick Sim is literally import your stuff here. It will take your talents, your gear, everything you've got equipped and you're using currently. You press the sim button, it will give you a rough DPS. It's a quick sim, nothing special, nothing like that. And we go to Top Gear, which we were just on, which I probably should have started with. So Top Gear, you can't change your talents. Your talents are exactly how you have them. But what it will do is scan every single bit of gear in your bags. So if you're and including trinkets as well, by the way, which is really handy. So if you have 2 hounds like I have here, and you want to know which one is going to pull ahead because of Azerite traits or stats or anything like that, you can click both of them, and then you can run the sim. I'm not going to do it because my sim queues are quite high, but it will tell you which one is best to be equipped and will give you the most DPS, and it will actually tell you what percentage of DPS it will give you as well. So bear that in mind. Gear compare is pretty much exactly the same as your Top Gear. However, if you have different gear sets, it will tell you which one will give you the highest DPS. All you have to do is select your gear set A here and gear set B here, and you can also add items and duplicate gear sets. If you don't have an item as well, you can search for it. If you know the ID code, which you can get from Wowhead, you can add that, and you can add an item that you don't have, and then you just run the sim as normal. Talent compare. Now this is really useful, and I've used this on multiple occasions. If you have 2 talents, which, you know, on all the information websites you use, whether it be Icy Veins or any other sort of class discourse, people are saying that X talent is better than X talent, and other people are arguing that X talent is better than X if you have so much of a certain stat. What you can do is populate your talent list here, add an empty talent list, and select another row of talents, and you can sim the talents against each other and find out which for you will be your best DPS talents on what fight. Now this is a great place where you will change your fight style. So patchwork fights, say like Mother and Talok for example, hardly any movement, just facing the boss, Fetid Devourer, you know, stuff like that. Great for single target. For Zul fights, you might want to go for Hectic Ad Cleave, for example, or like movement, heavy movement. This is a great place to be using these different type of fight styles, so bear that in mind when you're choosing your talents, whether it's going to be single target or AoE. And you might want to, especially when you get into mythic raiding, is sim for each different encounter that you're going to come across, so you know exactly what talents you're going to be going into the fight with and exactly which ones are going to be better for you during that fight. So that is very, 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 very good. Okay, stat weights. I was going to do a whole new video on this, but since we're on the website anyway, I thought I'd include it all into one, and if you need help with it afterwards, you can either come and see me, or I'll run you through it, or I'll do a separate video. So we'll start off by doing exactly the same as we have done before, which is loading from our SimC add-on. Well, that's awkward. Oh yeah, nothing appears. Right. So this will take in all of your gear, not your talents, by the way. And you can change all your options here. Honestly, for stat weights, patchwork, 1 boss, 5 minutes. That doesn't really matter too much. And then we will generate our stat weights now. So this is the queue time. They're quite low. 161 is quite low. It will tell you your wait time here, 2 minutes 30 seconds. That's fine. If you do want to minimize your queue times or have hardly any, there is a premium service offered by Raidbots. They do have a Patreon, and honestly guys, if you're going to be using this a lot, I would consider supporting the guys who make this website, because it is public for everyone to use and they need to make their money somehow. And honestly, I think we should all show our support. I mean, I'm a bit of a hypocrite, I haven't done it yet, but I will be doing it in the future because I use this site a lot, and without any support they won't be doing it for much longer, you know. So keep that in mind whilst using this site. Anyway, we'll go back to WoW, because there is something I want to show you which is pretty cool with the stat weights. So on top of SimulationCraft add-on, which you will be downloading, there is also an add-on called Pawn, and that's P-A-W-N, and this is pretty much a stat weight generator. So what you can do is import or create your own stat weights, and when you get a bit of gear which is an upgrade for you according to the stat weights that you've got, it will come up with a nice green arrow on your bit of gear telling you it's an upgrade, telling you generally normally how much of a percent of an upgrade it is and for what spec it's an upgrade for if you have multiple specs on your pawn strength. So how do we do this? You type in /pawn. Once you've downloaded the add-on, you will go to scale, manual, and then you will have pawn's generic default settings. When you're on them, you will click show this scale in tooltips on all your specs and leave it completely blank. I'm going to delete this one for now because I will import it again to show you how it's done. But generally speaking, you will have something that looks like this, where it says your character's name scales, and it will say the class and the spec, and you don't want that active. So we will deselect that. And now we come over to Raidbots, where you will see we now have our sim. So I'll run you through roughly what all of this means here. So pretty much when you're looking at the scales like this, every 1 point of, for example, weapon DPS will increase my DPS by 8.63. So that means every 1 point of strength will increase my DPS by 1.67. Every point of crit will increase my crit by 1.57, etc, etc, and so on. Now these stat weights do include a margin of error of 0.05%, so these mean that you're playing your class to absolute perfection pretty much with hardly any room for error whatsoever, as do most strings sims that we'll be doing. So generated the stat weights, we're staring at it, we know exactly what stats are best for us, so how do we keep on top of it? Here's a pawn string. We're going to copy that to clipboard. We're going to head back over to World of Warcraft, and we're going to open up the pawn. And we're going to click import on the share your scales. There we go. We import it, and it comes up here. Exane, Unholy, and you can see all of your stat weights here. And if we go to the scales, you can see it's still there. And that's it. You want to update this normally every week or every time you get a really you change your stats around so much, or if you get a massive upgrade on your items with heavy secondary stats on them, just to make sure you're keeping up with what's best for you. So last week, for example, my haste was on the top of my priorities, and now it has changed to crit for my unholy spec. I can't change them around too much because I am maining blood for Mythic Plus. And that, guys, is about all I have to talk to you about simming yourself. Again, if you're going into Mythic raiding, this is something you want to be doing often, every week if possible, before every raid. And for tanks and healers, it is not great. It only sims DPS. For tanks and Mythic Plus, it's good because your damage is valuable, I guess. For healers and Mythic Plus, your DPS is valued as well. So maybe if you're going into a Mythic Plus environment, that could be good for you then. If you want to see any more videos like this, let me know. Pretty much. If you don't, tell me shut up and I'll stop. Leave comments below in the video, all of that stuff. If you liked it, subscribe. If you didn't, don't. Apart from that, guys, if you need any more help, I'm always available. So, especially for those in the guild, the undecided, come and find me. You know who I am. For those who don't, my name's Physix or Exane in World of Warcraft. And that, guys, is a wrap. So, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.